We grow up believing we're inherently free, but look closely at the mechanics of our daily lives, and a different reality emerges. We are actively managed, bossed around, and governed by a sprawling network of corporate and statutory employees. When that realization hits, the initial choices seem bleak: accept the peonage, attempt a reckless armed insurrection, or try to run away and hide. But there is a fourth choice, one that doesn't require violence or surrender: the daily practice of active self-governance. To understand how this works, we have to look at this map. This boundary line is what we call the federal fence. On one side is the private, unincorporated jurisdiction of the land and soil you physically inhabit. On the other side is the public, corporate, and statutory jurisdiction operated by federal subcontractors. True self-governance isn't a political philosophy you adopt or a piece of paper you sign and forget about. It is the active, daily practice of policing this exact boundary line. Recognizing where that fence sits is the crucial first step. Without knowing where your jurisdiction ends and theirs begins, you cannot prevent these external agencies from committing what is essentially a jurisdictional trespass against you. But before you can govern a community or a nation, you have to clear the very first hurdle. You have to govern yourself. This diagram illustrates the internal divergence every individual faces. On one side are the habits of a managed populace: petty lies, cowardice, the impulse to bully, and toxic pride rooted in insecurity. These traits literally crumble the foundation of self-rule. When those destructive pathways are abandoned, the positive duties of a sovereign can take root. These are simple but rigorous: actively managing your own affairs, honoring your given word, and strictly violating no one else's free will. Uncompromising individual integrity provides the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for building a functional, lawful American government from the ground up. Once you've secured your own foundation, the focus shifts to the community. This means transitioning from a private state national into an active state citizen who steps up to participate in public, state-level governance. To make that standing real, you have to create a public record. This paperwork officially affirms your political status, providing the exact legal evidence needed to rebut corporate presumptions and private registrations that have been falsely attached to your name. There is no single magic method for establishing this record. It can be done through international public records, through local state recording secretaries, or even by sustaining publications in a local newspaper over an appropriate period of time. Within these newly formed assemblies, leadership isn't based on a rigid hierarchy, but on functional authority. This simply means specific personnel are granted authority solely based on their actual expertise in a given subject. Looking at this chart, a healthy General Assembly expands into a flat, committee-based structure utilizing nodes for vetting, elections, outreach, and record-keeping. Surrounding this is the Assembly Militia, where every able-bodied member helps with supply lines, communications, or administration. It's this exact mechanism, moving from a private internal belief to a documented functional public record, that transforms an abstract constitutional right into enforceable legal standing. Because the Assembly functions essentially as an extended family of neighbors, it absolutely requires a polite, businesslike, and productive atmosphere to survive. There is zero tolerance for disruptive behavior. The community must proactively shun gossip and remove anyone acting like a petty seventh grader, or worse, deliberate infiltrators trying to stall the work. To protect these meetings, assemblies utilize this document. This is the Bivens Declaration. It's read aloud at the start of proceedings to legally demand that any members of federal, state, county, or city agencies immediately disclose their presence. Historically, early self-governing communities relied on 100 courts. As seen here, about 100 families would consolidate into a central nexus to settle internal disputes. Today, that nexus is the Ombudsman Committee, catching and resolving conflicts before they escalate outward. By resolving perceived harms internally, the community ensures that external corporate courts are never utilized, keeping the statutory system completely out of our private affairs. When a community is secure and successfully polices its own disputes, the necessity and the jurisdiction of external statutory intervention simply disappears. Ultimately, an actual government exists to protect its people, secure their private assets, and maintain public resources like roads, bridges, and schools. This blueprint shows a fully seated state assembly relying on 4 pillars: General Assembly, state citizens, militia, and state jural assembly. Zooming in to the jural assembly, we find the community organizing courts and filling key offices like sheriff to enforce public law. But having the right to build this structure isn't enough. Think of it like a patch of wild blueberries. You may have the absolute right to harvest them, but that right won't feed you unless you physically push past branches and pluck the fruit. You can spend your entire life arguing about where the best patch is or what kind of bucket you should use. But unless you actually exert the effort, hike up the hill, and bend down to do the work, it's all purely academic. Self-governance requires a daily, physical exercise of effort to construct, protect, and maintain a lawful republic, one specific action at a time.